Yep, we observe a serious escalation on Russian-Ukrainian border. Russian armored vehicles and military trucks entered Ukraine last night, and a big number of them were destroyed by Ukrainian forces shortly on Ukrainian territory. Russia, by the way, still denies any fact of violating the border. However, even NATO Secretary General confirmed witnessing the Russian incursion into Ukraine, and many European leaders reacted. We saw that just in your report. But the matter is that it's not for the first time when Russia sends tanks and military trucks to Ukraine. All this happens regularly during last 3 months, starting from May, when we saw kind of a parade of battalion Vostok in Donetsk, battalion which consisted of Russian and Chechen mercenaries. The difference this time is that the recent invasion happened before international journalists' eyes, when everybody was watching closely on the situation with so-called humanitarian convoy. So this story became an incontestable fact that proves that the will of Russia to destabilize situation in Ukraine. And you know, that's not just sending vehicles and tanks and mercenaries and weapons. Several days ago, I visited village of Milove, that's just on the border, and witnessed the results of fire opened from territory of Russia on Ukrainian frontier guard. So these kind of things happen very often here, because as soon as Russia stops supplies for separatists here, Ukrainian forces will get an upper hand over them very quickly.
At the end of the day, though, Grigory, we've seen journalists observe for themselves that the Russian convoy is carrying sleeping bags, grain, lighting equipment and so on. Some journalists expressing concern that the lorries do seem to be quite empty. They're not stacked full. So what is your assessment as to what Russia is doing with this stuff?
You know, when the information about so-called humanitarian convoy appeared here in Ukraine, we all realized that it could be a beginning of a big provocation in order to announce a full-scale invasion. And this today's incursion could be just the second act of a play started by Russia. And you know, Putin is in a kind of a trap. His popularity has grown up to the heavens when he started his conflict in Ukraine, and today when Ukrainian armies step by step taking over control more and more territories, and Moscow-backed separatists have to retreat. This idea of creating a separate Russian Republic of Novorossiya failed. There is a big danger for Putin and his popularity. He just can't allow for himself to look like a loser in the eyes of his supporters, and that is why he can't dare to start even a big war. And by the way, just moments ago, I received information that second military convoy is formed and ready to cross the border at any moment, and I'm not speaking about the humanitarian convoy.
So what are your hopes then? You mentioned earlier on that meeting of foreign ministers in Brussels. What are you hoping from the EU? I mean, they're talking about any unilateral military actions on the part of the Russian Federation in Ukraine under any pretext, including humanitarian, will be considered by the European Union as a blatant violation of international law, Grigory.
You know, here in Ukraine, we all hope for international support, because today everybody in Europe, I think, should understand that Russia is a threat for peace, threat for security, not only in Ukraine, but for the whole Europe. And here in Ukraine, the fears of a full-scale war are spreading since Russia annexed Crimea. And since that time, Ukraine made almost a miracle. The country didn't have a combat-ready military force at that time. Its defense system was destroyed by previous pro-Russian president. And within just several months, Kyiv managed to organize well-prepared forces and that are quite successful here in eastern Ukraine in a war with separatists which are supported by Russia. And all this happens without significant international support. But of course, Ukraine doesn't have modern weapons. Even separatists use more powerful and contemporary arming supplied by Russia. And if Russia starts a full-scale war, it would be very difficult for Ukraine itself, without international support, to get an upper hand. But as people now often say here, a horrible end is better than endless horror.